Okay, so what we're going to do now is something that we've ignored for quite some time actually, and we're going to take a look at our token and deal with what happens when a token actually expires. Now, we've got our token set for 7 days expiry at the moment, and if I take a look at my console and take a look at the application, then we can see our JWT token sitting here quite happily, but we're not actually doing anything to actually validate the expiry of this token just now. So what we want to do is do something when the token expires, and what we will do is log the user out and give them a message saying the session has expired. But in order to do that, we'll need to make some changes to our API. So let's head back to VS Code, and what we'll need to do is go into our JWT generator class. And first of all, we don't really want to wait 7 days to test this functionality, so let's swap the expiry from 7 days to a single minute inside our JWT generator. But what we also need to do is go over to our startup class, and what we also want to do here is actually validate the expiry of the token, because at the moment, even when our token's expired, our server will still accept it. So what we want to do here is say validate lifetime, and we'll set this equal to true, and now this will validate the expiry of the token. And what we also want to do, because this lifetime validation, it gives a kind of 5-minute leeway to the expiry of the token. We also don't want to wait that extra 5 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll set the clock skew property, and we'll set this to a time span, which we'll need to bring in system for, and we'll set this to 0. And what this means is that when our token expires after a minute, then what we will get is a 401 back saying that we're unauthorized. But before we test this, let's just go back to our agent.ts file. And what we'll also do is we'll just add another condition in here to check for the status of 401. And what we want to do is just output the response here. So we'll say console.log and the error.response. And let's go and test this. So I'll just go back to my browser, and I'll need to log out so I can get a new token with an expiry time of a single minute. And I'll just log in, and I'll just log in as Bob again, bob@test.com, and password. And now we need to wait a minute for the token to expire. So whilst a minute isn't a long time, it's a very long time when staring at a screen. So I'm just going to pause the video and come back after a minute. So that should be about a minute. So let's just go to the console, and I'm just going to click on one of the filters, and we get the unauthorized back from our server. And if we take a look at the message here for our error.response, then what we get is our 401 unauthorized. No surprises there. But if we take a look around and inspect the response, we don't actually get the reason for the 401 inside here. All we've got is our configuration, the headers is empty, the request doesn't give us any additional information apart from the fact the status text tells us we're unauthorized. And yep, that's about it really. But we need more information than this so that we can make a correct decision about what we're going to send to the user to tell them their token has expired. And if we take a look at the network request, or one of these network requests, and we take a look at the response headers, then what we get inside here is a www authenticate header, and it does give us the reason for the error and the 401 in this case. But what we don't see is this particular header inside our error response. And why is this? Well, with CORS, it only exposes certain headers. It doesn't expose all of these headers by default. And this is one of the headers that CORS doesn't automatically expose. So what we'll need to do, we'll need to copy this particular header, and I'm just going to copy the text of this into my clipboard, and we'll go back to CORS inside our startup class. And what we need to do is also specify with exposed headers, and then I can just paste in the www authenticate token here. And if we go back to the browser and let's just make another request, and I'll just go back to the console again and see if I can make another request without actually needing to log out and log back in again. So I've got a new response back in my console. And what we can see now is that we actually get the www authenticate header back in here as well. So what we can use is the information contained in this site inside this header to do something and then respond to the user accordingly. And what we want to do is, when the user's token has expired, is actually log out the user. But this gives us another small challenge because we want to do this inside our agent.ts file. But we don't have access to any of our MobX stores inside our agent.ts file. And inside our user store is where we've actually got the functionality to log out a user. And we don't have access to this inside our agent.ts file. We can push them to the home page, so we'll do that. We can remove the token from local storage, so we'll also do that. But there's a few other things we'll need to look at as well. So let's just go back to the agent.ts file, and what we'll do is we'll add another check inside here. And what we want to interrogate here is the headers as part of our error response. Let's just destructure these as well. And I'll say headers. And what we want to check here is the headers. And we'll use the object accessor so that we can access the name of the header via its key property. And in this case it's the www authenticate, but this is all lowercase. So make sure we convert this to lowercase. And we just want to check that the value of this particular header is exactly what we get back from the server in the response. So I'll just go back and just open up one of these error responses. And what we want to get is the bearer and all of the text inside here, including these two quote marks around the token has expired as well. And I'm just going to copy this into my clipboard. And I'm just going to paste this in inside single quotes. I'm just going to paste in the response there. And now when we get a 401 because the token has expired, we're going to hit this particular condition. So what we want to do then is effectively log out the user, and what we can do is we can say window.localStorage and remove item and the JWT. We can also push them back to the home page as well. So we'll say history.push and we'll pass them to the home page. And what we'll also do is just give them a toast of info and say your session has expired. Please log in again. And there's one more thing we'll need to do as well, and that's inside our home page, because we're using the information in our home page or the user store to decide whether or not to display this particular welcome message. But we can't affect this from our agent.ts file. So what we'll also need to do in here is just check to make sure that we have a token. So I'll say const token equals window.localStorage, and we'll say get item, and we'll specify JWT. And what we'll do is just use this token property as an additional check to see if the user is actually logged in. And what this means now is that I should be able to go back to my application and test this particular functionality. So let's just go back and take a look. And I've already been logged out, and there should be no token inside local storage. So let's just log in again. And what I'll do is I'll just pause the video once again because I'm going to need to wait a minute to go by and then come back and test it. Okay, so that's about a minute that's gone by, so let's just try and click on something that makes a call to our API. And now we get the message, your session has expired, please log in again. And we're taken back to the home page, our token has gone, and we're presented with the login information. And that's what we're looking for at this particular stage. So what I'll do now is just reset the token expiry time, because having a token expire after a minute and automatically logging us out is possibly the most infuriating thing we could do to any user. So let's just add this back to 7 days in my case. And I'm not saying this is the best way to go about things, by the way, but this does solve the problem that we're trying to solve at the moment, which is to not infuriate our users by having them log in all the time. And our token expiry is probably a bit long to set it to 7 days, but we won't deal with that in the main part of the course. There is an alternative way of dealing with this, and we'll take a look at that in the bonus section. And what I'm referring to there is refresh tokens. But we'll consider this good enough for the time being.